Hello everyone, I'm the 5-minute reviewer and I'm here to tell you about this interesting game called the Plucky Squire, which was released in 2024. Is it good? Is it worth playing? Find out in 5 minutes. So first, let me talk about story. Now, the story is an interesting premise as it takes place in a children's book. Yes, you heard me right, a children's book. The hero of the story, the Plucky Squire, also called Jot, has to change the narrative of the children's book because currently it's overtaken by a villain called Humgrum who rewrites the narrative so that the bad guy wins at the end. Now, throughout this adventure, Jot will fight Humgrum's forces in the children's book and also out of the children's book in the real world as he gets to transverse between the 2D book and the 3D world in an attempt to overthrow Humgrum's forces and win the day. Now, the story itself is very charming with very interesting twists and turns, so I highly recommend it based on its story. Next, I want to talk about gameplay. Now, this game obviously takes a lot of influences from the famous Legend of Zelda game, where you look from the top-down perspective in the children's book world and plays like the original Legend of Zelda. And when you enter the 3D world, also it plays like the more modern Legend of Zelda games, where you get to explore the world in a more open world basis. But some cool things it brings, as I highlighted earlier, where if you change the words of the book, you actually change the items or the environment of the book. As shown here, where I change the staircase to a block and I get a stone block. While my gameplay video seems to be deceptively simple, some of the scenarios are really difficult. Now, for example, as I'll show you in a while, I have the catching fish challenge, and it's not easy for me to catch the fish even though it's just a simple button press. It took me many tries before I managed to catch this fish as you see right in front of you. Now, the button sensitivity for some of the boss fights and the challenges seem to be a bit off, especially for the Nintendo Switch version. I don't know whether this is a problem across all the platforms because I played the Plucky Squire on the Nintendo Switch. Now, this brings me very nicely to talk about the presentation or the look or feel of the Plucky Squire. Now, bear in mind that all this footage comes from the Nintendo Switch version, so I'll be covering mainly from the perspective of a Nintendo Switch user. Now, when Jot is in the children's book or the 2D world, things run very smoothly. However, the problem comes in when he's in the 3D world. There seems to be a bit of lagging issue. The problem is quite compounded, especially in certain areas where you actually turn the pages of a book, but then it's not obvious that your button presses make a difference because there is some lag time. So that is a weakness of the Nintendo Switch version. But I must say, regardless of the version you're playing the Plucky Squire on, the way the 2D animation is done is fantastic. I must give props to the art direction because a lot of things remind me of a children's book, and even my son, who is just a toddler, really enjoys me playing this game and also jumps into the fun and picks up the controller himself to play this game. But this doesn't mean the game itself is easy. One of the hardest challenges is actually the Mega Eagle boss fight. Now, the Mega Eagle boss fight, as I'm showing snippets of you in front now, is actually very difficult because you need precise timing to get the button presses correct. The problem with the Nintendo Switch version is that because of the drop in frame rate, sometimes your timing will be a bit off. So I recommend, if you are playing it on the Nintendo Switch, to play it in handheld mode where the frame rate seems to be a lot more stable than the dock mode. So all in all, what do I give the Plucky Squire? Now, because I had great fun with it, I really enjoyed the cool concept and a lot of brilliant ideas, even though the ideas weren't used everywhere throughout the missions. I do give Plucky Squire a final score of 7.10 for the Nintendo Switch version. For other platforms which do not have the frame rate drop problem, I will give it an 8.10. Now, my main two gripes are actually the gameplay where a lot of the mechanics were introduced, but they weren't used as often as I would like it to. So therefore, I drop it a couple of points. And the 3D environments, I feel that could have been more effort could have been put into it. But all in all, this is a great game and I highly recommend it to you. Maybe you like to play next to your kid and your kid will probably like it too. Okay? So all in all, have a great day ahead and do try out the Plucky Squire if you do have the time and resources. Take care everyone and have a nice day.